For most, discipline is a military attribute, but here the only war being waged is against one's fate. These young women come from the impoverished areas of Cape Town, plagued by massive unemployment and gangs. The aim of the Chrysalis Academy is to give them wings, to give them the ability to see beyond a seemingly blocked horizon.
They treat us as women, but they are making us independent. They are making us to know that we can do it. Even if you think that you can't do it, they make us think that we can do it. They give us strength that we didn't even know that we had.
The academy is home to 160 boarders. Telephones, drugs and cigarettes are forbidden, and the timetables are intense. But at the end of their stay, these young people have the rest of the year to acquire their first professional experience.
We specifically want to focus on women because in society generally, women and particularly black women are still at the end of the queue with respect to opportunities.
During a 3-month training period, students alternate between intensive courses and workshops, such as decorating a child protection centre. The academy also offers them physical activities and therapy sessions. Founded in 2000, it is currently aimed at 18 to 25-year-olds.
I think we should start a little bit earlier with our programs. For a 12-year-old girl is already going through a menstrual cycle, is already entering into becoming a lady and respecting herself and those type of things.
A valuable tool in the fight against crime, the academy is funded by the authorities in Cape Town, the city with the highest homicide rate in South Africa.
This is where Letitia Ngenda Kumina's father was found. After almost 50 years, she was able to identify his body thanks to his 4 gold dentures. The 1972 massacres loom large in the collective memory of Burundi. Between 100,000 and 300,000 people were killed. Letitia was just 10 years old when her father was arrested in Bujumbura, Burundi's largest city.
We never knew where my father was taken. What I know is that they took our land. They looted everything we had. We lived a miserable life, and we had to return to the interior of the country.
Letitia's father was a senior banker and a Hutu living in Bujumbura. He was arrested by the Tutsi-dominated government, and the family lost everything overnight. Her younger sister Magnifique was a baby at the time.
There was no relief. I'm still sad. When I remember all that, I think maybe I wouldn't have had this life if it hadn't happened.
The Burundian government established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, known as the TRC, to investigate the inter-ethnic massacres and get to the truth. Since 2019, the TRC has been exhuming mass graves throughout the country, using witness testimonies to locate them. Thanks to these efforts, some families have managed to find their loved ones' remains. In the political capital Gitega alone, the TRC says it has found nearly 7,000 victims after exhuming 9 mass graves. Last December, it declared that the massacres constituted genocide.
Qu'il s'agit d'un génocide.
When we say today that it is a genocide committed against the Hutu ethnic population in Burundi, it is a genocide because the state planned, organised, carried out this genocide, because the resources of the state were used.
But not everyone shares this view in Burundi. What began on the 29th of April 1972 as attacks by Hutu extremists against Tutsis led to reprisals that quickly escalated into massacres of the Hutu elite. Some accuse the TRC of bias because the Commission's members mostly belong to the Hutu-dominated ruling party.
One must recognize that in Burundi, ethnic conflict is a constant theme which is hugely exploited. At the time when the Tutsis were in power, the idea of a Hutu menace was a constant theme, whereas today it's the opposite. It's the idea of the Tutsi menace, which is also a constant theme.
The TRC has been criticised for focusing its research on sites where Hutus were buried and ignoring those where Tutsi victims were found.
At low tide, these women stand knee-deep in these salt waters bordered by mangroves and filled with oysters. Armed with basins, they are here to pull out the mollusks clinging to the roots of the mangroves. It's an exhausting job, but one that allows them to support entire families.
We learned how to do this from our mothers, who did the same thing. We didn't have the chance to succeed at school, and oyster farming was the only way to support ourselves and our families.
In Joel Fed Youth, 120 kilometers south of Dakar, oyster farming has remained an informal activity centered on traditional harvesting, and it's mostly a women's job. For a week's harvest, each of these pickers can hope to sell 10 kilograms of oysters and earn 50,000 francs, the equivalent of just over 75 euros. They could earn much more and reach a wealthier clientele by selling fresh rather than dried oysters.
Look, our oyster is not good quality. In this state, it's not edible. All we can do is put it in the oven so that we can sell it later.
In order to sell fresh oysters and to sell much more, it would be necessary to modernize production and develop ways to preserve and transport them. The Senegalese government has launched a plan for oyster farming, notably to improve sanitary conditions. First up is monitoring water quality.
Oyster production is below its potential, below stakeholders' expectations. Production in 2017 was estimated at around 16,000 tonnes, of which 400 came from the oyster beds.
Developing these oyster farms can offer ways to increase production whilst leaving the mangrove roots undisturbed. Thanks to a system of mesh bags attached to floats, this oyster farmer produces both quantity and quality.
We have doubled our production compared to last year. In 2021, we had 2 tons of oysters. This year, we are at 4 tons. Before, only foreigners consumed oysters. But now the Senegalese are interested too, and we have partnerships with hotels.
With challenges of food insecurity and overfishing, Senegal's mangrove oysters could prove to be an underexploited source of protein that also promises to boost incomes.